I'm Cherie Stevens. We're here in Idaho Falls, Idaho, which is in southeastern Idaho. The reason I'm here is because I've been involved with an organization called Parents, Families, and Friends of Lesbians and Gays for about 13 years. Being involved in that organization has allowed us, my husband and I, the privilege of being involved in a lot of other human rights activities in the area. So it's been a fun and exciting 13 years with, some interesting experiences, lots of, fun people, some not so fun people, but for the most part, very, very positive experience.
And how did you first get involved with PFLAG?
I first got involved with PFLAG when my son came out. I didn't respond exactly like I dreamed I might have. I said, being who I thought of myself as a very liberal, progressive sort of person, and my response when he said, "Mom, I'm gay," was, "No, you're not." And things got better from there, but not immediately. And Chris said, "Mom, there's this organization called PFLAG that it might be helpful for you to talk to other parents." And I said, I would never go to something like that. Well, a couple of months later, I was talking to our pastor at the time, who knew Chris was gay before we did, and she said, I have some books and some information, and I'll bring it out. And she brought out the information and a couple of books, and she also had a couple of names of contact people. And interestingly enough, I recognized both of the contact names from PFLAG. I had been involved with one woman in an organization, American Association of University Women, a number of years before that when our kids were little. And another name on the list was a mutual, a friend of a friend. So, but it was still scary. Our pastor, Barb, who is still our dear friend and involved in PFLAG as well, said, "I'll go with you." And we said, "No, we don't need you to come with us. We can go by ourselves." Meanwhile, I think if either one of us had said, maybe this isn't a good idea on the way to town, we would have turned around and gone home, because it was a very silent conversation, no conversation. So I still remember walking down the steps to the basement of the Unitarian Church and meeting people. And once you were down there, once we were there, it was great. But soon came to look forward to the meetings, to look forward to the people that we met, huge variety of people. At the time, there was absolutely nothing else for GLBT people in town either. So we've always had a mix of parents and GLBT folks. We had PFLAG started a youth group during this period of time. It was active for about 5 or 6 years. Great experience. Hundreds of kids that we were able to meet and support and do fun activities with. And so that was one of the really rewarding experiences. And then we've been involved in things like trying to defeat a proposition in our state to have a constitutional amendment defining marriages between a man and a woman, and that did pass, unfortunately. But still, it was a good experience. We've been able to support other people in the community. We recently had a Prop 8 rally against that proposition in California. Having a son who lives in California was particularly near to my heart. So that's kind of the story of how we got involved.
Can you tell me a little bit more about what it was like during that campaign against the constitutional amendment? Like what kind of stuff you guys were able to do, and what kind of stuff you saw?
What we did was probably fairly minor in our community, but we did have people turn out. We actually had a table at the library, outside the library, where passed out information. And at the time I was still working. My husband had already retired. He and several other people manned and woman to the table there, and handed out a lot of information, talked to people. It was, it was a good experience. It was kind of depressing, but I think there was a lot of information that got given out to people, and each of these things and activities that happen, you end up discovering other people who are interested in this work. So it's beneficial.
Well, what would you say it's like for GLBT people in Idaho?
Idaho-wide, I'm not sure. For a number of years in Pocatello, there was a little pride celebration, and it's kind of tapered off. There's one gay bar in Pocatello. I think in the Boise area, the reason that I say it differs is it's a little bit more progressive in that way. It's a little larger population. Here, I think there's a really strong community, but we don't have a community center or things like that. So it's very much the getting together. The Unitarian Church has been the home to PFLAG. It's also been the home to our float. A number of years ago, an organization was started called Breaking Boundaries. There was an organization for a number of years that was the Eastern Idaho AIDS Coalition. And Breaking Boundaries kind of took over that nonprofit and has expanded the mission. So it's not only supporting people living with AIDS, but it also supports the greater community as far as diversity goes. And that's all types of diversity, from GLBT to children in the schools that need extra assistance, just a lot of things. And that organization has, I think, become well established and well respected in the community. So that's been a big step, and I think it's, the first black tie dinner that was maybe 7 years ago was a fun experience. It was the first time, other than our youth group, that in this community I had ever seen couples of the same sex be able to dance together. That was just it sounds little, but it was a big step because it was a public event, and so that was great. So I think you'd get as many stories. My son, who is gay, would probably not live in Idaho Falls again. There are a lot of people who love the area and have a strong community here.
Now, can you tell me what it's like to be in PFLAG when someone new comes in and they're like, my child's gay? Or, is that something that you?
We don't often get new parents.
Okay,
That's
right,
what it's like. Yes. We love it when new parents come. I talk more on the phone than I actually see, which is fine. And occasionally we get new parents. Most of them are looking for support, but perhaps not the same kind of support that we had a few years ago when we first went. Many times now the parents are already okay with who their kid is. They're wanting to talk to their parents, or maybe wanting to get more involved, and looking for other like-minded families and parents and people. So, occasionally you get somebody who's still. I had a telephone conversation the other day with a mom that I had been connected with through my son that I mentioned as a pastor. A member of his congregation knew that John had a gay brother and knew we were involved in PFLAG, and so I talked to this woman who, was worried about her son. She was concerned that he was not doing well in school since he'd come out, that he, was just having a hard time. He was in Chicago. She was just very concerned, and yet they were already, even although they're members of a faith that really is not very accepting of GLBT people, they were accepting of their son. They were just concerned and wanted to know how to basically help him. So that was a good conversation.